to our next episode of the podcast. I have Hattie Murdoch with me today. I give you the in your name. I don't know if you noticed
Truly
that.
Scottish. I'm good, yeah, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm all right. Yeah, I'm not too bad. I'm really, really excited to talk to you today.
Thank you for having me.
Because we were just chatting before we hit record about my experience of you. Sounds strange way to say it. But your impact and your influence on me as a producer has actually been really massive, particularly last year. So thank you for that. And I'm so happy you agreed to come on the podcast with FASE.
No, thank you so much for having us. And like we were just chatting before, I said it makes my heart very full to know that I've had a bit of an impact somewhere along the line. So I'm just chuffed, man. I'm really, really chuffed. So thanks for having us on. I really appreciate it.
So welcome. So Hattie is a music producer, a songwriter, a guitarist, plays keys, an amazing vocalist, is such an all-rounder, and Hattie's got such a music business head on her too. So it's super, super great to have you here, and we're going to dive into your single. Can you just give us a wee bit of background as the songwriter or one of the co-songwriters on this track? How did it come about? What was the situation? Like, I love the details. Like, where were you when you wrote it? Just hit us with the background of Simple.
Sure thing. So yeah, it's one of these songs that has just come out of nowhere. So I often write on my own. I think traditionally I've always written on my own, but I write for other people. That's a huge part of what I do. So collaborating and co-writing is it's just something that now comes really naturally to me. I started off as an artist before I sort of moved on to writing for other people. So I was a bit stuck with this one. I think I had chords and I had a verse, and then I was like, I don't know what to do. So it was one of the first times that I actually went, right, I need help here as a writer. I need somebody to kind of just tease apart what I'm trying to say. So going back a little bit, as a gigging musician, as a gigging artist, I used to have a band. Then they got too expensive, so then I just tried to do everything on my own, which is why I probably do so much, got me into production, because I was like, right, don't need a drummer anymore, you can disappear, you take up far too much room, right, how am I going to program this myself, do this. So I do a lot of looping, live looping, and with guitar mostly, so a lot of my tracks kind of develop as I go along, and I gig a lot before I really kind of commit to recording. So in my live set, I had kind of the upbeat stuff. I knew I had my set opener, I knew I had my set ender, and I needed something in the middle, really, as a bit of a breath of fresh air, like something that was a little bit like less complicated, because my stuff just gets super, super layered, super complicated. I get really confused, and I need a breath halfway through my set. I'm like, I just need to play guitar and sing without pressing any buttons or kicking a pedal or whatever. So I was looking for a song like that, and I had this verse, and so the verse was, you said you're running for me, but what you're running from? You said you're gunning for me, where'd you get the gun from? And I was like, okay, that's cool, I like it. What the heck does that mean? And I came up with a few more things, and then I was like, do you know what? I know the perfect person to help me with this. So this is my friend Beth Keeping, who is an amazing writer. She is like Taylor Swift, but like English. She's just class. Beautiful voice, stunning voice, great writer. But lyrically, this is a bit that I really wanted to get from her, is that she just manages to say things in a really clear but clever way. And I can cloud all my lyrics in metaphor, and I think when I write on my own, I can sometimes be a bit scared to actually say what I want to say. So I'm like, metaphor, yeah, it's kind of about you, but is it? Like that kind of stuff. So I knew that Beth was the perfect person, so I literally just jumped on a call with her, and I was like, do you like the vibe, do you want to help us with it? And that's how we came up with the rest of the concept. And and really the concept is about almost the process of me asking her and what I wanted out of this song. I wanted it to be simple. I didn't want it to be overcomplicated. I wanted it to be clear lyrically, and also just from a chord point of view, harmonic point of view. I use the same chords all the way through, and I mean that does come from a looping aspect, because originally I was going to loop this, and like, so a lot of stuff is built around 4 chords, because you know, with anybody who isn't familiar with looping, you tend to build over a set amount of chords and take things out and add things in, but it basically just layers up. So so that's pretty much where we came up, and it is about being honest in a relationship, coming to a relationship going, okay, I've got baggage, but I'm here, and I'm not gonna try and try and be something I'm not. So accept the baggage, but this is just me being real. And so there was a lot of serendipity going around with the whole song. So that's kind of, as a songwriter, where it came around. But mostly it was written in my house, in my flat, over Zoom.
Do you write whilst do you use the loop pedal as part of your writing like toolbox?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it does depend. I think over lockdown, I've not been gigging, so I've been writing in a different way. But yeah, there's a lot that comes from just playing things through, and I do a lot when I'm writing for myself, because I don't have to explain myself. I can kind of just experiment and go with my gut, and then something kind of comes out, and oh, it's a word. Okay, right, that's great, and that's going to go in, and then it kind of develops like that. And that's what happens musically. It kind of just builds, and then I'm like, right, I feel like I need a kick in here, or I feel like I need a snare coming in, or and I just really go with the momentum, I think, rather than trying to be too prescriptive with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then what you end up with is a track like this, which really does breathe and grow as it develops as well. But I also love, and we're obviously going to jump into the sonic aspect of it too in a minute. I really love how there feels like there's a threshold that it doesn't exceed, and it's a really enjoyable experience in this kind of really this pop world of instant gratification with music. You know, like take me to that chorus, and you know, there's hardly even an intro, because I just want the meat, I want it done, you know, and I want it now and fast and repeated. And there's simple, and also the concept, the name, it's simple, the concept behind it, the fact that it's actually about being honest, which in so many ways is one of the simplest ways we can communicate, is through honesty, but the hardest. And I feel like in music and in production, it can be the same, right? It can be really hard to keep space, and you've done it so well.
Thank you.
You've kind of highlighted some production aspects and some like instrumentation and things. So we're going to just jump straight into that now.
Sure thing.
So what's the first thing that you want to share with us when it comes to how you approach the production of the track?
Yeah, sure. So I think with this one, I wrote it back in 2019, and I just found the demo today, because I was like, oh yeah, I know what the demo sounded like. And then I got the demo up, I was like, oh God, yeah, that is a lot different from what I remember. So when I'm gigging, I don't really gig with a keyboard. Like, I have a little HATi kind of keyboard that I take with me, but I use my looper and my guitar. So I've got 2 guitars, and then I kind of just build other sounds up. I use the RC300 if anybody's interested, but it's because I don't take a keyboard, I tend to gig on guitar. So I write on piano. I love playing piano, always have done. In fact, like, I'm probably more trained in piano than I'm self-taught with guitar. But a few pure practicality, I just hate lugging loads of gear around. And I've already got like 2 guitars, a couple of other bags, a stand, this, that, the other. So, yeah, right. So I started gigging this before I demoed it. And I was gigging it on guitar. So the first demo is actually on guitar. And I remember turning up to like the writing session with Beth, and I was like, yeah, I'm trying to be all clever. Like I've got, it's kind of like 6/8, and then it turns to like 4/4, like whatever. Which I have done in like a previous track, Pale Hands, which starts off in 3/4, and then it goes into 4/4 just subtly with a kick coming in. And I really like playing with those kind of time signatures and just changing your perspective on where the first beat is. Or I'm a really, really big electronic music fan anyway, and a lot of kind of dance music effectively. And the clever producers I like, Bonobo, Marabou State, that kind of stuff, they really, really play with like where you're sitting each time, and you're like, oh. So I turned up and I was like, yeah, it's in 6/8, and here's the thing, and then it goes into 4/4. Anyway, that is basically where the demo is. So I'm just going to play you a bit of the start of the demo, and you can kind of hear how it was.
Said you're running for me, what you running from? Yeah, you're gunning for me, but where'd you get the gun from? You think the past will come back around, I'll do the same, I'll let you down. Don't put suspicion on me, I'm not everyone. Trust and believe in only what you see and trust.
Yeah, so effectively, like that is, effectively that is the demo where it was. And then when I was doing the demo, I did it how I thought I would loop it up live, because initially I was just going to loop it before I realized I needed more of a chilled acoustic kind of breath of fresh air in this set. So I'll just take you towards the end. Yeah, so this is more towards the end of the demo.
Be a sample, be a sample. This is sample, this is sample. I am sample, you are sample. Be a sample, this is sample. Be a sample, be a sample. This is sample, this is sample. Not an illusion. You are sample. I'm coming to your soul, to the skin.
Kind of gone into this little dance thing. I think I was listening to like probably a lot of churches at the time, and I was like, I'm such a synth artist, like this is what I'm doing. Just messing around. And I listened back to it. So I stepped away from the demo I was doing, kind of some other production. I had quite a lot of other production. And as an artist, your stuff always goes to the back of the queue when you're working with it. Like, this is it, when you're writing a lot for other people. It's just, I don't know, I'm like, women and children first with the life jackets and stuff. It's like the Titanic. And my songs are there, like the violin playing in the background, like going down. So yeah, I just put it to one side, and then I was like, lockdown happened. So this is 2019, September 2019. Then lockdown happened, and I was like, you know what? Like, the one thing I need to do is get this track finished, because there's something about this song and I really, really like it. But it was almost like it was trying to go somewhere that it was going to kick off. Like, it's coming up with the hi-hats are there, it's building this tension, and then it kicks off and I'm like, ugh, what a freaking anticlimax. And it just felt wrong for the song. It felt like it was just trying to be something that it wasn't. So lockdown happened, and actually just production, in terms of production for my own material as an artist, this is actually the first one that I have fully produced and released for me. All my previous releases, I've worked with a producer, and I've co-produced. So I've worked with John Elliott and Andrew Archer, who are based in Newcastle. They run Loft Music Studios, and I've worked with them for over 10 years. My first release was 2011. And I trust John. Like, I've learned everything from him. I've watched him. So, and I've produced for other artists for quite a few years now, but for myself, it was always like, I can't finish this. I need somebody else to come in here and like finish those ideas. And I could have easily sent this demo to John and he could have turned it into a complete like banger. He's just like their dance music producers originally. Although he does a lot of cinematic and trailer things now. But I was like, no, there's something about this. I can manage this one. This is one I can do on my own. And I really had to fight with myself. So I really sat down and I was like, okay, what if I just try it on piano? Let's just try this. And also stop messing around with time signatures. Keep it simple. Just stop overcomplicating it. So I ended up, doing it on piano. And really just, it went from there. Yeah, it went from there. And then it felt different.
Shifting onto a different instrument, did that instantly give you a new perspective of where the production could go and kind of the pace as well? The pace of that demo is very different to, you know, the final track.
I think it's quite reflective of lockdown, if I'm honest, because obviously all the live stuff stopped. All the pressure just, I mean, obviously there was a few months of, oh, goodness gracious, let's just drink wine and do a jigsaw puzzle in my pajamas all day, every day. Although I have to admit, I did write loads with other people, but the pace of life changed and it gave me a little bit more time to go. The big thing was, it's like, this doesn't need to be a banger. Like, I don't need this to kick off because I'm not trying to please an audience here, as in a live audience. This isn't a festival. It's not a gig. I'm not trying to get everybody on side with a 4/4 beat, you know, like a kick or whatever. So I just had more space with it and more time with it and just slowed it down. And I'm scared of space. I'm so scared of space in tracks, and I think so many producers feel a bit the same. They're like, oh my god, what do I do? It needs something in that space. But this really just was my option to go, do you know what, let's just let this ring. And even as I was doing it, I was like, oh, should I turn it back to 6/8 and take that extra beat out so there's less space? I'm really glad I didn't.
Isn't that amazing, that fear of having space in our tracks and our production and the need to fill it all, and I feel like that's very synonymous with life as well in general. So like what you're saying, lockdown flipped that, and in doing so, almost you know when you're reapproaching the piece, that this new pace of life can almost be expressed now musically as well. So that's a really interesting like parallel between what's going on in your life as a person and the work that you're creating as a producer. They are so intertwined and interlinked, and I think it's very difficult to work in tandem without those links being strong, and they need to be respected as well. I think
I'm a really big fan of that, because I just to sort of with production where I kind of started. From my point of view, I shifted from being an artist to a songwriter for other people, as I kind of said before. And I was like, I'll demo it, because also I had no budget to get a producer on board to kind of like demo all these songs that I was writing, because I was writing all the time, doing sessions all over the country, like just trying to get in everybody's session. And it's fine having acoustic demos, but I was like, no, I can do better than this, because I've watched my producer for so many years. I've also programmed loads of stuff, like, you know, I was using a lot of tech with the band. I already had Ableton, was using that for live stuff anyway. So it was only natural that I was going to just go, right, I'm going to do this now, whatever. And there's a lot of times I've had stuff that I've written, and sometimes in sessions you've only got a guitar. You're only in a room with another writer or an artist or whatever, and you've got a guitar, so it's always written on guitar. But you sit down to produce and you have to get that out your head. You know, it's not a guitar song. The song is the chords, the lyrics, and the melody, but it's dressed in different ways, and you can dress it however you like. For me, I like doing a remix and reimagining something that already exists. It's the same way as I sort of try to approach production and go, you know, I need to dress this in a different way. Okay, I'm going to put it in that out outfit. You know what I mean? This is like short skirts,
heels on.
Exactly. Fur coat, no knickers kind of thing. No, like, so it's that's how I kind of have approached remixes. I've only done a handful really, but if people are out there doing remixes, it's the same thing. It's like you get the stems and you go, okay, well, let's take out the main element of, say it's a piano track, take the piano out, and like, how is it going to work with just pads underneath, or like how can you redress things, and that for me is a really exciting way to produce, because you can instead of adding things, you take stuff away and then you put it in a different order, and try and really, like, with remixes again, you're kind of limited with what you have to use, and I feel like that really helps creativity. And I often try and do it where I limit myself to the amount of tracks I use in a production. So I stick to 30 tracks, and I'm not going to throw everything at this and build and build and build. It's like, okay, let's see how much mileage I can get out of 4 instruments by reversing it, flipping it, like changing that, doing it's all of that stuff gives everything such a fresh approach, and you don't have to feel like you are coming up inventing the light bulb or whatever.
Totally.
It's already there, you know.
Absolutely. And when you work in that manner too, there's and we were talking about this on the last podcast episode, there's a sense of playfulness and curiosity of you, because there's a bit of the unknown.
Good.
So now we've had a listen to like your demo and when it all started. Do you want to take us through what you've got now? How we what's the meme that was going around and during lockdown? It was like how it started, how it's going.
Well, for lockdown, for me, I went the opposite way. I think I came in quite all right, and then halfway through, it was shocker. So yeah, I think like another thing that that I do a lot is I do a lot of referencing. So I do get reference playlists together when I properly think about things, and there is no problem. Some people are like, oh, you can't use references, but I just feel like sometimes it again can get another fresh perspective, or and actually, so one of the main ideas actually did come from a reference track, and I think it was an artist called Mink. The track Something Better. It was on her EP, and she has this choir going on, quite an acoustic track, and this choir just comes up, and it's like, whoa, that's like such a breath of fresh air. Like it just comes in, and you go, oh my god, I feel so like positive, and for me, that's what I wanted. I wanted to kind of get this breath of fresh air. So one of the first things I did, so I laid the piano down, did a guide vocal, and I did a choir straight up. And so I'll just solo it out here, and it kind of comes in after the end of the first chorus. There's really not much in the choir. I think it's like 4 parts, but so. Dead simple, like I'm gonna use that quite a lot, that word. But I really then started to build the track around that choir part. So towards the end of the track, as the track starts to build, I start putting in that choir, but I kind of just repeat it, so it's not just twice, it's kind of going round and round, which is how. So this, I think, because a choir for me is always like coming together, it's security, it's a comfort blanket, it's this, you know, lovely like layer of harmony, which for me is just really comforting, and in something that's quite vulnerable, especially in this track, I just needed something that was comforting. So nice and warm. So I ended up using the choir at the end of the track as well. And then the other thing I did with it was really start to work with some sound design on it. And instead of throwing another synth towards the end to build things up, I actually took the choir again, and I kind of chopped it a little bit closer together, so it was just over and over again. And then put there's a really good plugin called Replica, which is a delay plugin. It's got some beautiful diffuse plugins, but also just diffuse delays, but also just some really creative delays. So I use that, and then there's also this other plugin, output, do a plugin called Movement, which is, again, I just love this because it can bring movement to a pad or to something, and, you know, give it some stutter or give it some like, so it feels like a synth, so it feels like an arpeggiated synth or whatever. But instead of trying to find a sonic synth that kind of fits in, it's like, well, the choir already does fit in, so I'm just going to use it again. So I'll just solo this out, and then this kind of comes in towards the end. So really that kind of just gives everything a little bit more movement. So that's it with the choir. So then after the choir, what did I do after that? I built in some pads. I'm a really big fan of like, if you don't have a budget, people don't need a massive budget, but if you don't have a budget at all, but you're looking for some different sounds that are just a little bit more unique, the Labs series is amazing. Spitfire Audio, they do a bunch of free plugins, free instruments, and there's just some really interesting pads and whale sounds and like atmosphere. It's just great. So I layered some of those up to kind of create the atmosphere at the beginning, which you can hear in the track. And then from that, like the kick, obviously I had to work out where I was going to bring the kick in. For me, it was natural that I was going to put it in after the second chorus. And really everything else came quite naturally. I think I did the backing vocals after that, just with the simple just BVs on there. That's another way I like to work sometimes, is if I'm the producer on somebody else's track, I like to work, if they're a great vocalist, then I try and get as much out of the vocal as I possibly can. So whether it's using their vocals as a pad, so I layer them up, or using just their vocals creatively, so whether it's a ha 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 kind of backing vocals, or so it's not just doubling or harmonizing, it's really using them as creatively as possible, because I think it just blends the track together really well. And often you're sometimes looking for an instrument and it's like, it doesn't need another instrument. Yeah, use your voice. If you've got that as an instrument, use it. You can get these kind of ideas from all over the place. So I'm going to play some of the guitar parts as well, because really the references I had for the guitar parts were Marabou State. It was there's a great band called Koala who I'm obsessed with palm muted guitars at the moment. It's just, I can't get enough. So vibe. I love anything like that brings in this movement. That's I just freaking love it. So I had these ideas, because keeping consistency within my artistry, because I do play guitar live. Obviously I was going to have guitar in there, and I think to have that kind of spacey reverb with a little bit of delay, kind of clean guitar, really for me came from like listening to Daughter, I think back in like when her first album came out, and it was just that, like, I love that tone, and it brings a haunting feel to things. So I had those bits of guitars in it already, but then I needed this, so that helped me sort of build the texture up anyway, and sort of build the layering up. But in terms of rhythm, I had these little that I was doing myself badly, like really badly. I'm not a lead player. I can do little repeated riffs, which works great with looping, because you do it like once round and then press record, so you don't have to keep in time. You're just like, okay, I think that was roughly in time, great, it's recorded, carry on. And I was just like, I'm dead bored with kind of what I'm doing, and I needed a fresh perspective. So I got really good guitarist called Pete Bennett. He I kind of gave him these reference tracks and was like, this is kind of the idea I have for the guitar part, like these palm muted guitar parts. Can you do it and do it better and record it really well? So he sent me about, like, I don't know, 6 or 7 tracks, and I kind of then started to edit everything together from there. And so that's kind of, so I'm just going to solo out some of the guitar parts so you can hear those, because I think, like, for me they kind of really leveled up the track. And then you've got the other ones that kind of interject and So yeah, you kind of get that feel of, and this is the thing about production, like I can play guitar, right? I can play bass. We can all kind of do lots of different instruments, but I haven't spent years honing those skills. I'm definitely a jack of all trades. Like my training was actually classical, so I'm a flute player, which I don't really get very often to put into tracks. Although I did just do it on so I produced this track called Sand. Sorry, it went off on one a little bit, for this amazing artist called Nadeja, and I got my flute in it. I was like, yes. And she's like, yes. Is that flute? I was like, yeah, do you mind? And she's like, no, I love it. I was like, whew. But so I think it's a massive thing to kind of outsource. I have no problem in outsourcing. Yeah. Like, I think it's part of the musical ecosystem. And I think we put a lot of pressure on to kind of do everything ourselves. We see these bedroom producers or we see producers and they're like, oh yeah, I did everything. And you're like, okay, that's cool. And I could do everything as well to a point, but it's like, no, I want this to be really good. And I don't have I don't have the amps. I don't have I haven't invested my money in that. So it makes more sense for me to outsource it to someone who can just do it straight away, and I get the tracks back and they're amazing, instead of me going, oh, God damn it, chucking the guitar down, you know? I think we can suffer in silence, so to speak. We can literally just be banging our heads against the wall. And all you need is somebody to go, have you tried this? And you go, oh, staring right ahead of me, like in front of me. And yeah, I'm super, I never used to be though. Like, let's just say I'm so stubborn. I'm a stubborn Aries. Honestly, I'm like this. I can do it on my own, you know. And yeah, so it took me a while to trust other people as well. But I think you find your tribe, and I think about this a lot these days, that you have to have a trusted group of people around you, and you make connections all the time, and they then trust you because you've trusted them with, and it can only, as you say, kick back in a positive way. So yeah, use resources, and it is an ecosystem. You know, it's not an industry if you do it all yourself. I really think that, and session players need paying. You know, or we all need. This isn't we want to do this for a business. It's what we've chosen, and it's not based on doing things half-assed, really, or
particularly when you are if you're an independent artist, if you're a mid-level artist, you know, if you don't have loads of financial backing and you're working a day job so that you can do this for your music, it definitely makes more sense to use that finance smart, which means spend the money on getting the best possible result you can get, you know, and that means working with a producer like Hattie.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. If you've got this vision of a track with all this brass on, you're going to have the budget to get a player in. Like, you just can't fake that. Like, it's for you. And so if you don't have that budget, then just scale it back a bit and just go, okay, well, what can I achieve to the best of my ability with the resources that I have? You know, it's not about, you know, not thinking big. It's just, is it going to be as good as it can be with those limitations? If you look at the traditional role of a producer, they weren't players. Like, you know, you think back, film and TV producers, they're not the director, they're not the writer, they're not. I think there's a lot of pressure on music producers in today's environment that we do everything. And if you look back, it is about procuring the right tools and the right players and the right studio that suits the project. So I think if you understand your project and what it is, and you have it like any other project management, you know, you can then act like the traditional producer. But if you've, you know, got the skills to do things yourself, then, you know, brilliant, that's also it. But producers don't have to be players. They can have a vision, and if they go, right, over here, you over here, come in, that's how the music's going to be created, that's also a producer. So I think we forget that sometimes. I think the role has changed. So it's just to bear in mind if anybody's like, freaking out because they can't play guitar or they can't do this or can't do that.
There's a lot of conversation around there about what a producer is, and I
Yeah.
feel like it's a very fluid term. That you're right there, in my opinion, of what a producer is and does. It's the person who essentially is in charge of getting to that creative vision, getting to that end result in whatever means that they have, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And it will change over time as your skills progress and you go, okay, I have loads of interest in this, or I picked up this instrument. You know, we make if we're doing what we want to do and it's getting to that end result, then we can call ourselves whatever. Really, I think it's just grateful to be like making music half
Doing
the
it.
time.
I know.
Yeah,
That's it.
It's just mad, isn't it? But yeah, I was just going to say that the in terms of the production here, really that's kind of it. I did like bass line. What else? Just the drums. I think the only thing that I really did, and this actually changed. So from a mixing point of view, I did outsource the mix. John Elliott, who's, as I say, has worked on all my stuff. Trust him massively. So he was definitely going to be the guy to mix and master. And so yeah, he just gets my kind of where I'm putting things and all this. He's a mix engineer that, like, for me, is pretty much nailed on the first.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the only thing I changed in the mixing process was I had a snare towards the end. These drums aren't mixed because actually this is where I had bounced them down for stems. So it's not even a rough mix, but I'll just play a bit of the drums. And I had a snare in here and it hit it from that foot of the floor with a snare, which kind of like was like, okay. And it's this thing with the demo as well, where I had, it's going to kick off. And then it doesn't really kick off. And I actually wanted to keep that tension in. I put this foot of the floor with the snare in, right? And then I had the timps in. So I've got some timp rolls, some orchestral rolls to bring some drama and to kind of like, again, to help roll the drums a little bit more towards the end. But and I ended up taking the snare out. So I sent it to John with the snare, and then I was like, I think it needs to come out. It just feels wrong. So I'll just show you what I mean here. This is the drums coming in here. I ended up taking out that clap because it was just turning it into something, again, that it wasn't. The only other thing after that was just the usual kind of transitional effects. So for me, like, as a producer, one of the biggest tips, I think, when you're starting out to make your music sound freaking awesome is like, get your transitions right. So whether that is a reverse cymbal or even just a cymbal like a ride cymbal when it comes in on so you know where the chorus is, or you know where a certain important part is, you want a little build up, a little bit of tension and release. So cymbal rolls, reverse cymbal, or splice. I'm sure you talk about splice a lot. I love it for little effects and things like that, reverse vocals, but you can do it yourself. You can do it with sound design. So really that's kind of like, for me, just a really big tip. So I'll just play some of like those are just I don't think they're even sparkles at the end. I think I tend to put transitional stuff in pretty early on because it makes it sound wicked. I'm like, yeah, I'm at the chorus.
That's it. And it really like assists the listener into that space you want them to go, you know, like we're coming into the chorus or we're coming into the pre-chorus, you know, I want you to come up a level, and those like little transitional sonic pieces, they just nudge that listener exactly where you want them to go.
If I was doing it live, for example, I often do it where if I've got a kick in, for example, pretty much all the way through, one of the biggest tricks you can do is take the kick out. You don't have to add things. You don't have to add. Sometimes actually taking things away is just as powerful, if not more. If you take a little, one beat of silence before something comes in, it's just freaking incredible. It can work really, really well. So I think if you can play around with those transitions, maybe, as I say, sometimes basically when you get a chorus hitting and you're like, it's not hitting, it just doesn't feel, but you're like, you know, really in the early days for me, I was like, oh, add another synth or add another lit. And then where it just gets really muddy in the middle, you're like, oh my God, I've got like 25 synths in here and 2 basses and like a sub and it's still not hitting. And the easiest thing to do is just take the bass out before the chorus came in. So when the chorus comes in and the bass hits, it's just like a massive, it just is that feeling of I'm here, I've arrived, you know? So again, yeah, big tip, like, take shit out.
That subtraction before addition, and just absolutely, and really subverting, or like you're saying, you're like pulling the bottom end out so that when you do hit in that, say, that first beat of the chorus, that bottom end is back and you're like, oh, I'm here.
Yeah.
But I also loved the tip as well about coming in on the 2 of the bar instead of always on the 1. Like maybe the vocals come in on the 1, but then the music hits on the 2, and that's just, it's got an epic feel to it. Yeah.
You want to get to that point where it like drops, and it's like you see it on all these hype videos. Everybody jumps up in the studio, they're like, whoa, yeah, dude. And then you're like, that's how you want to feel. So it could be
yes.
It could be a folk track and you still want to feel like that. Thank you so much for having us. It's been a pleasure to talk about things that I really love for an hour. It's not often that you find people that you connect with really, really well and have this like shared passion over production, really. And it's just a pleasure to talk through. It's been a really good reminder as well for me to sort of look back at what I did.
You said you're running for me, but what you running from? Yeah, you're gunning for me, but where'd you get the gun from? You think the past will come back around, I'll do the same, I'll let you down. Don't put suspicion on me, 'cause I'm not everyone. Trust and believe it, only what you see, and trust and believe it, only what you see. I'm not an illusion, I'm coming to your soul, to the skin. Push past the confusion, I'm not hiding anything. This is simple, we are simple. This is simply real. We are simple, this is simple. We are simply real. I am bearing broken promises, I'm shouldering a few, but I forgive you if you falter, if you forgive me too. 'Cause I think the past will come back around, you'll do the same and let me down, but won't put my shadows on you. You're not everyone. Trust and believe it, only what you see, and trust and believe it, only what you see. I'm not an illusion, I'm coming to your soul. soul to the skin. Push past the confusion.